She stood at the edge of my property line, soaking wet, shivering like a leaf in a thunderstorm. Her sneakers were caked in mud. Her jacket hung off her shoulders 3 sizes too big, and when she looked up at me with those hollow eyes, something inside my chest cracked. "I'll work for free," she said. Her voice was small, broken. "Just let me sleep in the barn." I should have said no. That's what the old version of me would have done. The version that stopped trusting people after my wife walked out. The version that buried himself in cattle and fences and silence for 6 years on this ranch in Cedar Falls, Montana. But I didn't say no. I just stood there, rain drumming against my hat, staring at this girl who couldn't have been older than 19. "What's your name?" I asked. She hesitated, like even that was too much to give away. "Lily," she finally said. "Lily Dawson. I'm Marcus Cole, 42 years old, owner of a dying ranch that used to be my father's dream." I hadn't spoken more than 10 words to another human being in weeks. And now here was this stranger asking for shelter in my barn like it was the last hope she had left, because maybe it was. "Where'd you come from?" I asked. She looked over her shoulder, down the long gravel road that disappeared into the hills. "Doesn't matter," she whispered. "I'm not going back." There was fear in her voice, real fear, the kind that doesn't come from a bad day, it comes from a bad life. I should have asked more questions. I should have called someone. But instead, I nodded toward the barn behind me. "There's a cot in the back," I said. "Blankets in the chest, don't touch the horses." Her eyes widened like she couldn't believe it. "Thank you," she said, and the way she said it, like I'd just given her the whole world, it made my stomach turn. What kind of life makes a girl grateful for a cot in a stranger's barn? I watched her walk past me, shoulders hunched, footsteps quiet. She didn't look back. She just disappeared into the barn like a ghost. I stood there in the rain for a long time after that, thinking about the girl, thinking about my wife, thinking about the son I never got to meet because she left before he was born. I hadn't let anyone in since then. And now, for reasons I couldn't explain, I just opened my door to a girl who looked like she was running from something dark. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept getting up, walking to the window, looking out at the barn. The light was off, no movement, just the rain hammering against the roof. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself she'd be gone by morning, but deep down, something in me hoped she wouldn't be. Because the truth is, I was lonely. I'd been lonely for so long I forgot what it felt like to be anything else. And seeing her standing there, desperate and broken, it reminded me of something I'd been trying to bury for years. The feeling that I was desperate and broken too. I just hit it better. The next morning I woke up before dawn. I grabbed my coffee, pulled on my boots, and walked out to the barn. The cot was empty, but folded neatly on top of the blankets was a note. It said, "Thank you for not asking." And underneath those words, she'd written something else. "I'll earn my place, I promise." I found her behind the barn, hauling water buckets to the trough. Her arms were shaking. Her clothes were still damp from the night before, but she didn't stop. She just kept moving, like if she paused for even a second, she'd fall apart. "You don't have to do that," I said. She looked up at me. "I said I'd work. I meant it." There was steel in her voice, the kind that only comes from being broken too many times and deciding you won't break again. I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked over to help her. We worked in silence for the first hour, feeding the horses, checking the fences, cleaning out the stalls. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for breaks. She just kept going, matching my pace even though I could tell she was exhausted. Finally, around mid-morning, I handed her a thermos of coffee. "Sit," I said. She hesitated. "It's not a trap," I added. "Just coffee." She took the thermos and sat down on a hay bale. Her hands were trembling, and when she took a sip, she closed her eyes like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. That's when I realized she probably hadn't eaten in days. I didn't say anything. I just walked back to the house and made her a plate of eggs and toast. When I brought it out to her, she stared at it like she didn't know what to do. "Eat," I said. She looked up at me. "Why are you being nice to me?" The question hit me harder than I expected, because I didn't know the answer. I didn't know why I was doing any of this. "Because you asked," I finally said, "and nobody ever asks." She didn't respond. She just picked up the fork and started eating, slowly at first, then faster, like she was afraid the food would disappear. I sat down across from her and watched. And for the first time in years, I felt something stir inside me, something I thought had died a long time ago, compassion. "Who are you running from?" I asked quietly. She stopped chewing, her jaw tightened. "My stepfather," she said. "He's not a good man." I didn't need her to say more. I could see it in the way she flinched when I moved too fast, the way she kept her back to the wall, the way she never made eye contact for more than a few seconds. She was scared, genuinely scared, and suddenly I wasn't just offering her shelter anymore, I was offering her protection. "He's not going to find you here," I said. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw something flicker in her eyes, hope. You don't know him, she whispered. He always finds me. Then let him come. The words came out harder than I intended, but I meant them, every single one. I didn't know this girl, I didn't know her story, but I knew what it felt like to be trapped, to feel like no one was coming to save you, and I wasn't going to let that happen to her, not on my land, not on my watch. She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly she nodded. Okay, she said, okay. That night she slept in the guest room, and I sat on the porch with my shotgun across my lap, waiting. 3 weeks passed. Lily stopped flinching when I walked into a room. She started eating full meals. She even smiled once, just once, when one of the horses nudged her hand looking for a treat. It was a small thing, but it felt like a miracle. We fell into a rhythm, mornings on the ranch. Afternoons fixing fences, evenings sitting on the porch watching the sun dip behind the mountains. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was peaceful. And for the first time in years, my house didn't feel so empty. One night she asked me about the photo on the mantel, the one of me and my wife on our wedding day. Who's that? She asked. I stared at the photo for a long time before answering. Someone who left, I said. She nodded, like she understood. My mom left too, she said quietly. When I was 12, she couldn't take it anymore, so she just disappeared. I looked at her. And she left you behind? Lily shrugged, but I could see the pain behind it, the betrayal, the wound that never healed. I used to be angry at her, she said, but now I get it. Some people aren't strong enough to stay. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there watching the fire crackle in the fireplace. I stayed, I finally said. On this ranch, after my wife left, after everything fell apart, I stayed because I didn't know how to leave. Lily looked at me. Is that strength or stubbornness? I almost smiled. Maybe both. She laughed, softly, barely a sound at all, but it was the first time I'd heard her laugh. And it hit me like a punch to the chest. I was starting to care about this girl, really care. Not like a stranger helping another stranger, but like family, and that terrified me because everyone I'd ever cared about had left. My father died when I was 23. My mother followed 2 years later. My wife walked out without a word, and the son I never knew was somewhere in California living a life I wasn't part of. Caring about people meant losing them, and I wasn't sure I could survive another loss. But that night after Lily went to bed, I sat on the porch and stared at the stars, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to push her away. I wasn't going to build walls. I was going to let her in because maybe, just maybe, this was my second chance. A chance to be the person I should have been all along. The next morning I told her she didn't have to work anymore if she didn't want to. She looked at me like I was crazy. I want to, she said. This is the first time I've ever felt useful. I nodded, didn't argue because I understood. Work wasn't just a way to earn your keep. It was a way to prove you mattered, a way to feel like you belonged. And for the first time in her life, Lily finally felt like she belonged somewhere. But that peace didn't last, because 3 days later a black truck pulled up to the edge of my property, and a man stepped out, a man with cold eyes and a cruel smile. Lily saw him from the window, and she screamed. His name was Ray Dawson, Lily's stepfather, a man with a face like a fist and a temper to match. He walked toward the house like he owned it, like he owned everything. Get inside, I told Lily. Lock the door. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. He'll hurt you, she whispered. He always hurts people. I said get inside. She ran, I heard the door slam, the lock click, then I turned to face him. Ray stopped about 10 feet away. He looked me up and down like I was nothing. You got something that belongs to me, he said. She doesn't belong to anyone. He laughed, a cold, ugly sound. She's my stepdaughter, my property, my responsibility. She's not property, I said, and you're not welcome here. He took a step closer. I didn't move. You don't know who you're dealing with, he said. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, I replied. A coward who hurts people smaller than him, who chases down a terrified girl across 3 states because he can't stand that she finally got away. His face twisted. I saw his hand move toward his belt, but I was faster. I pulled my shotgun from behind my back and aimed it right at his chest. Get off my land, I said, and don't come back. He froze. His eyes flicked between me and the gun. You won't shoot me, he said, but his voice wavered. Try me. We stood there for what felt like an eternity. The wind howled across the hills. The horses whinnied in the barn, and somewhere inside the house I could hear Lily crying. Finally, Ray took a step back. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, I replied, it is. He stared at me for another long moment. Then he turned and walked back to his truck. He climbed in, slammed the door, and drove away. I stood there until the dust settled, until the truck disappeared over the hill. Then I lowered the gun and walked inside. Lily was curled up on the floor by the door, sobbing. I knelt down beside her. I didn't touch her. I just sat there, close enough that she knew I wasn't going anywhere. He's gone, I said. She looked up at me. Her face was red. Her eyes were swollen. He'll come back, she whispered. He always comes back. Then I'll be here, I said. Every time. She stared at me, and then slowly she reached out and grabbed my hand. It was the first time she'd ever touched me, and in that moment something shifted between us. I wasn't just a stranger who gave her shelter anymore. I was someone she trusted, someone she believed in. And that scared me more than Ray ever could, because trust is a fragile thing. It breaks easy. And once it's broken, it never heals the same. But I made a silent promise to myself that night. I would never break her trust. I would never let her down, no matter what it cost me. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. Lily barely spoke. She just moved through the house like a ghost, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And honestly, so was I, but Ray didn't come back, not that week, not the next. And slowly the fear started to fade, but some wounds don't heal with time. Some wounds need something more. 6 months later, I stood on the porch watching Lily saddle up one of the horses. She'd learned to ride, learned to mend fences, learned to laugh without looking over her shoulder. She was 19 going on 20 now, but she seemed older, wiser, like the darkness she'd survived had made her stronger. I was proud of her, more proud than I'd ever been of anything. "You're staring," she called out. I smiled. "Just thinking." She walked over, leading the horse behind her. "About what?" "About how different things are now." She nodded. "Yeah, they are." We stood there for a moment looking out at the land, the mountains, the sky streaked with gold and pink. "I got accepted," she said quietly. I turned to her. "To the community college?" She nodded. "Full scholarship. I start in the fall." I felt something swell in my chest, pride, joy, and a little bit of sadness, because I knew what this meant. "You're leaving," I said. She looked at me. "I'll come back every summer, every holiday. This is my home now." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She stepped closer and wrapped her arms around me. It was the first time she'd ever hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." I held her tight, and for the first time in years I let myself cry, because she wasn't just a stranger I'd helped. She was family, the daughter I never had, the second chance I didn't deserve. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet too. "You saved me," she said. "You know that, right?" I shook my head. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to land." She smiled, that same small smile I'd seen the first time 6 months ago when she was soaking wet and begging for shelter. But it was brighter now, fuller. She was healing. And so was I. That fall, I drove her to Billings to start school. We said goodbye at the dorm, promised to call every week, promised to see each other at Thanksgiving. And as I drove back to the ranch, I realized something. My heart wasn't ready for her that night she showed up at my door. I was closed off. Bitter, broken, but she taught me something. She taught me that love isn't about being ready. It's about showing up anyway. It's about opening the door when someone knocks, even when you're scared. It's about giving people a chance, even when they haven't earned it yet. Lily Dawson walked into my life on a rainy night in Montana, and she changed everything. Now the ranch isn't so quiet anymore. There's laughter, and phone calls, and visits. There's hope. And that's more than I ever thought I'd have again. If you've ever felt alone, if you've ever felt like no one was coming, I want you to know something. Someone out there is waiting to help you. You just have to ask. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories like this. Because sometimes the people who change our lives the most are the ones who show up when we least expect them.